All right, hello everybody. I'm Bruce from SquaredUp. Regardless of where you are in the world, a big warm welcome to you. Thank you very much for joining this dashboard server release webinar. Hopefully you can hear me okay and see my screen. If not, I'm sure I'll find out very shortly. It's with great pleasure that I bring you today's release, where we're going to go through all the cool stuff that is new. As is customary and tradition, I have a single screenshot view of everything that is new in dashboard server, so you get a kind of feel for what's to come in today's webinar. Obviously, we're going to go much deeper. Let's just dive straight into the good stuff by taking a look at our first feature of today, which is a new visualization, the hosting stack tile. I say new visualization. Some of you who have been around SquaredUp for a while, and I see a few familiar names on the webinar, will be aware that this tile has been around for quite some time, but it's not been something you could custom add to a dashboard. The hosting stack tile was on the monitored entity dashboard, and it was kind of possible to put on any dashboard, but you had to know JSON. You had to go and find the perspective containing this tile and mine the JSON, and then update GUIDs. It was not super intuitive, so it's great news that we've made this available as a separate tile. No JSON is required is the first piece of good news. You'll also notice some enhancements to what we show on the tile. We now show power state and maintenance mode state as well. As I'm sure you'll all appreciate, nothing more frustrating than getting so far into using SquaredUp and seeing odd things you're not expecting, like items in weird states, when clearly sometimes that's to do with the fact the machine is off or is in maintenance mode. So we now show you that information on the hosting stack tile. You can add multiple hosting stack tiles to the same dashboard as well, which is really, really useful. There we go. First cool feature to show you, exciting stuff. Next thing, we've got a couple of things in the area of monitors and monitoring. Clearly monitors are bread and butter for SCOM alongside your rules, but the monitor tiles within SquaredUp haven't had any love for a while, so it's great to be able to do some work in this area. The first thing in this area, as you can kind of see from the screenshots, is you can now group the monitors by health state. This was a very highly requested feature from customers from 5.7 and prior, to be honest. And it makes total sense. Show me the things I need to worry about first, rather than doing it based on SCOM GUIDs or any other method. It's also now possible to group by object name, sorting alphabetically, ascending or descending, and this is what the control looks like to enable all of that. So it's a small thing, but it's one of those things that will make a massive difference to the use of this existing tile. Really valuable piece of functionality. Then we have also in the area of monitors, the block tile. The block tile has been around since the dawn of time itself. It's been around for a very long time. You've been able to sort this tile by health state for quite some time, but what's new is to be able to sort this tile by health state and availability. So as you'll see in the screenshots, we have a wall of green, which is fine, but we also have within that wall of green all of those machines that are unavailable because they're switched off, sorted rather than scattered throughout the block of green, which is really quite useful when you're trying to understand the ones that aren't green, to be able to do something about them. If the machine is off, you know, there's a clear reason why it's red. That makes sense. The controls for this are really quite simple. It's just an additional option on the sort when you're in the edit for the tile. We'll show you how it works in a minute in a demo. Then we have conditional colors on more tiles. So as you may be aware, it was possible in previous releases to add whatever color you wanted to whatever segment you wanted of a donut chart. But clearly, donut charts are not the only charts available in SquaredUp. So within the area of performance, we have made conditional coloring available on more tiles. And this is the result. You can see in my demo example, I've effectively set thresholds with color coding so that things that I care about focusing on more are red versus amber versus green. But clearly, there are multiple applications for being able to color code something. You can color code based on the values, but you can also color code based on the label. So let's say you want to color code based on department, if you have that information in a label, or version of SCOM in this screenshot, for example, to color code everything with 19 in the label in one color. All of that is possible. So really, really valuable feature. And this is available on a number of performance tiles, not just the donut now, so the line graph, the spark, and the bar, which is great. And as far as configuration is concerned, we've enabled the all-powerful mustache, which is a great way of having plenty of flexibility as to how you define this. And this is my example where we've just set values to effectively set thresholds. But as I say, you can use mustache whichever way you want. I'll show you more in the demo in a minute. Then we have a very highly requested feature from customers, as it's been sort of something that customers have grown to expect in other tools, the ability to see data points on line graphs. Really important for where you have what appears to be a flat line, but is in fact multiple data points. So take this example here. If this were a straight line between this data point here and this data point here, you might make an assumption, correctly or incorrectly, as in this case, that there's no data in between and it's just drawing a straight line between point here and point here, when in fact there are two data points in the middle. Being able to see them is really quite useful for understanding that, that it's not a case of we haven't got data, the data is showing a flat line. Which is why it's important. This is set at the level of the graph, and when you drill down into the graph, it flows through to the drill down as well. And it's a really simple checkbox, show points, to turn on or off. More course stuff coming. I think this is possibly my favorite feature of 5.8. Even though it's in the administration area, it's not so shiny from the end user's perspective when it comes to seeing the dashboards, but when it comes to the life of everyone here, it's a vital feature in the area of perspectives. So as you will know, previously, it was quite difficult to actually see all the perspectives that were set up within SquaredUp, and to be able to see more importantly where those perspectives apply. So we've enabled a new tab within the system settings area of SquaredUp, where you can see all of your perspectives. You can see when they were modified, but really importantly, you can see under which conditions this perspective will appear, which was the reason why we've implemented this feature. This was a common customer request. So this top one, for example, will appear where the class is Windows Domain Controller and the group is Windows Server 2016 Computer Group, etc. The other thing you could do here is click the preview button. So as long as you have an object within your SCOM deployment that would result in this perspective being shown, we will show you that perspective, which means that if you want to go make changes to the perspective, it's all very possible to do. You can also delete them from here as well. All these columns can be sorted on, and you've also got search here. So if you want to search for, you have lots of them, let's say, and you want to search for a match that's particularly important, like in this case, let's say HP-UX was particularly critical to you, you could go and search for that. So it's one of those things that seems like it's not that important, but really this is quite important for just administering SquaredUp and being successful with perspectives. There you go. I don't need all the rest of my bullets because I've talked through it all already. Moving on to a feature for VADA. So as you will be familiar with, on a VADA map, we show these blue lines with dots at each ends to show the relationships between the groups that the objects from SCOM fall into. And that can be useful when you have a lot of them and you're actually building out your VADA map. But when it comes to seeing the built-out VADA map on the slide, that is less useful and can get in the way of seeing the actual monitoring in the form of these green and red lines in the background. So we have a new display option here, which is literally a slider to hide these blue lines on VADA maps like this. So it was another one of those things that was requested by customers, and this falls into the category of annoying prior because you want to be focusing on the lines that infer monitoring. Are the links between the components that make up this VADA map green, red, or otherwise, and why? This means you get closer to doing that more quickly, which is important in the world of monitoring. Moving on to something that's going to be very difficult to demo, so I won't even attempt, you'll be pleased to hear. But Dashboard Server 5.8 is 20 to 30% faster in high load environments. Obviously, depends on how you've configured SCOM and the underpinning infrastructure. But this is sort of come out of customer feedback and is important in very large scale SCOM deployments. There are also a number of security fixes in the area as well. So good news all round. So you can tell by the fact that this is not, there's no picture on this slide, that we're getting quite close to a demo. So let's get into that, shall we? If I bring up my demo lab here, we'll dig straight in. So this is the dashboard that I screenshotted and shared at the beginning that has one of every tile on, which we're going to unpick over the following sets of dashboards here. So I'm going to start off with my hosting stack. So this is again what we showed. We saw in the slides we have the ability to show power state, but also when something is in maintenance mode, so hoster 1 is in maintenance mode, as well as the whole stack which you'd expect to see. Obviously you can drill down into the specific objects as before, but if I now put this dashboard in edit mode and go to the edit of this tile, or maybe create a new one, we'll just look at the edit for now. It is a tile, obviously, that is called hosting stack. It's within the area of status. So that's where you go to access it, and you scope it to a single monitored object. And that is all the config there is to do. The tile displays exactly as you would expect from where you would see it on the monitored entity view from days gone by. It's still there as well. Yeah, it allows you to build up pictures like this that show you the whole gist of a fictitious application without using VADA, which is quite cool and quite useful when it comes to troubleshooting and diagnosing issues within SCOM. Also quite simple to demo, so there we are. Then moving on to monitors, all the things to do with monitors are on this dashboard. If I pop this one in the edit mode, we'll start with the block tile over here on the left-hand side. So you'll see that my blocks, I've got them sorted by health on the sort here, health, state, and availability, which means that you can see where machines are off and on in one block without having to pick them out from a large list. I've in the case of my demo lab, only shown a subset of the results possible, so you can actually see what's going on without being inundated with too many tiles. But in a production environment, a block tile can get quite messy quite quickly for a high level of scale. So that's the block tile. Moving on to icons now. So again, this is what I screenshotted in the slides, but you can see they are sorted by health state, which is awesome. Ascending, descending is possible. Everything else in this tile is as you would expect to see from previous. We also have the ability to group by monitor state, object. So there we go, now the group by objects. This is kind of useful. I'm sure there'll be situations where this is useful where you want to see you know, things in a specific order, where you've got a tightly defined machine naming convention, for example. So you could then group by the object name. On filter, obviously you can filter out specific states. So if you wanted to filter out the uninitialized ones, for example, because they're not applicable to these particular VMs, you could do that just like I did there. No new functionality in this area, but it all builds to a more rounded picture of how you would go about seeing monitors in SquaredUp in this fashion. So here then I have obviously my sort that I showed you earlier, and that is monitors. Nice and straightforward and simple. If I go on to performance tile colors, this is where we get a bit more involved. If I go on to the edit of this, I've got a few more examples than what I screenshotted. So I have got the example I put in the slides to start with here, which is my database space free. This tile is a top N bar, which is cool, and I have it scoped to a specific group. I have a metric picked out here. But if we start to go to the options at the bottom here, I've just specified top 10 because I don't want this to go off the screen. I want you to be able to see all the cool stuff I'm doing. But when I go to the color tab, you have the mustache syntax that I screenshotted. So in this example, let's say I wanted to change when things appeared green, and let's say I wanted to pick out something based on a condition matching in the label. In fact, that's a perfect example. Let's say I wanted, so you see now this doesn't match because this is badly formed syntax. There you go. These are all the labels for all of them contain the word SQL. So now I've color coded them all green by making that change, but you get the idea. And blue is obviously the default color, which is why when I delete that row, it's what's coming through. But mustache appears many places in SquaredUp, so you'll be very familiar with what it is and how it works. So all the standard things you could do with mustache to share conditional colors is possible here as well. So there we are. Then going down to my line graph at the bottom, so I've got a bit of conditional formatting on here, and I've got my data points. You can see what they look like. Really useful for being able to pick out those data points where you think you have a straight line. I have more or less straight lines at the bottom here, so I can see the individual data points. And if I hover over, obviously I've got the label to see what it is and the point in time where that data point is from. If I go into edit here and go to display, down at the bottom, it's a simple checkbox to show data points, to toggle it on or off. And you'll also see I've used a bit of conditional formatting based on the label of these to highlight any that have the word DNS in their name as red, as we have done here. If I just turn on show data points again and now drill down into a data point by clicking it, you'll see that those data point indicators flow through to the drill down as well, which is really useful on the perspectives when you're trying to troubleshoot something. You don't want that inconsistent experience. Then we have our sparkline over here on the right. So I've applied a bit of conditional formatting to this as well. On the color tab, exactly the same approach and syntax as with this top end bar on the top right corner. So exactly the same gist as possible. So I can color code them based on what their labels are or based on their value. So here I've done it all based on the value and have effectively applied thresholds again, which is a really good visual way of seeing where you have problems. I haven't sorted them, so these are in whatever order I had them in before, but it's really now easy to see, well, this one's the one I need to worry about the most because it's the one that has the least free space. This is obviously a demo example, nothing in here is particularly critical, but there we are. Really cool and a bit more involved as far as the demo is concerned. To bring it all together, this is what you can build. Really awesome. Next thing I'm going to show you is if I dig into system over here, we're going to have a look at perspectives and have a look at the perspective functionality I mentioned in the slides. So the thing that's the most exciting to me about this is the whole matches aspects. You don't have to figure out what each GUID is from SCOM to look up things. You can clearly see some here where I've got rid of management packs, so I'm left with GUIDs. But essentially, you know, these are really, really easy to see. I'm just trying to think now what's in my demo lab. If I hit preview on this one, will I get a preview or not? Yes, I will, because I have an object of this class in my demo lab to see the perspective, which obviously means I can then go and edit it as I might edit any other perspective. Even to a new tab. And these go from quite specific, quite generic to anything weird and wonderful and really specific. I'm trying to think if I have anything. Specific IDs, look, ID Contoso Sales App. So obviously this is a demo example, and this preview should give me something. As long as there isn't objects to see in your SCOM deployment, you'll see the perspective, which is awesome. And that is what there is to see. So I'm going to go back to slides now quickly and talk through a few more things that are a bit more difficult to show. So for those of you who are EAM-X customers, your life is also improved by virtue of what EAM-X is and does. For those of you who don't know, EAM-X is all about plugging SCOM's blind spots. SCOM is only as good as the management packs you have in SCOM. It only has objects for those things. It will only show you health of those things and obviously alerts for those things. You may or may not know, but SquaredUp has two different offerings. There's the dashboard server series of offerings, which you'll be very familiar with because you're on this webinar, and there's cloud. And with cloud, you have a large number of plugins, and this is an example of some of them. We've made a number of improvements and we have some new plugins to talk about. So for those of you who aren't familiar with these logos, which this one, for example, Cisco DNA, I wouldn't have necessarily recognized the logo to start with. So we now have a Cisco DNA plugin allowing you to gather information into SCOM, into dashboard server. We have a Jira Service Desk, or Jira Service Management, as it's now called, plugin, and a Jenkins plugin too. But it's not all about new plugins, no. We're working hard on improving existing plugins. And in this area, this is something you can expect to see more of from us, essentially working on improving the depth of those plugins and the quality as to what you can do with them. And we've recently made a bunch of improvements in the area of SolarWinds. There are more still to come. And plenty of investment is going on in the area of plugins. So we're working on either in the planning stage or actually writing code right now to improve the live in the area of VMware, Azure DevOps, and Azure in general, which is our most popular plugin for SquaredUp the Cloud Edition. Just to go a bit deeper on that, what's the difference between these two editions? Why might you consider joining these two worlds up? So on the top half here, we have SquaredUp, our cloud offering, which has plugins for multiple tools. And at the bottom here, we're talking about Dashboard Server, specifically the SCOM edition, which does have plugins, but primarily it is for SCOM. That's where its focus is and focus lies. So SquaredUp, the cloud offering, is, as you could probably guess, it's cloud hosted. It has over 60 plugins now for a large array of tools. I think we're at 63 plugins from memory now. The whole idea is anything we plug into, rather than sticking the data in a big data lake, which is the sort of standard answer here, it's all about a data mesh to allow you to draw insights by joining data from multiple sources together. And that's backed by a knowledge graph, which is really important because it's all about the relationships between those objects, rather than thinking about it sort of SQL style in tables with relationships between the tables, object level relationships. Why is that valuable? Well, when you compare to Dashboard Server SCOM Edition, which is obviously best of breed for SCOM dashboards and is on-prem, there is a vast array of plugins for cloud that are just not available on-prem. So with EAM-X, you can pull through the health and more into SCOM and therefore surface insights with Dashboard Server alongside all of your SCOM data to complete the picture and plug all of those blind spots in SCOM in terms of what it can see and what it has access to. You wouldn't otherwise want to necessarily plug with management packs. Management pack dev is very time consuming and costly. Everything with cloud is UI driven. So that is where EAM-X comes into the picture. If you haven't seen it already, please do go and check it out at squaredup.com. The cloud edition, there's a free tier, so you can go and have a play and see what's possible with the plugins there. Good stuff. So all that's really left to say is the Dashboard Server 5.8, the RC release candidate, is available today at download.squaredup.com. This is true of all the editions with the exception of Azure. So do go and check it out today. If you do go and upgrade in the in-place form is what we recommend. So you can access all your existing dashboards and configuration. And if you have any issues, because you're an RC customer, we will give you priority support because we are really keen on getting that feedback to make SquaredUp Dashboard Server the best product we can make it for you guys. General availability is due towards the end of February, and it's going to be based, when exactly that will land is going to be based on your feedback. So the more feedback we get, the more things we see the need to change, the later this will be. But the intention is for this to be late in February. On features, the vast majority of what I've shown is available for all tiers, so Teams Connect, EAM and EAM-X. Obviously, the VADA functionality is available in the EAM tier, and that's because VADA itself is not available in any lower tier. And of course, with EAM-X, you get the ability to plug into all those additional data types that are available in cloud. So do go and check it out today at download.squaredup.com. And that is all I have to show. So I hope this has been useful for you. I'm now going to turn over the floor to Q&A and see what's coming via the chat. So let me have a look. Is it only the SquaredUp Dashboard Server version that needs an EAM-X license? It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get all that additional data from cloud into Dashboard Server, you won't be able to do that without an EAM-X license. If you are not interested in plugging into all of that additional data from all those additional sources, no, you don't need an EAM-X license to take advantage of what I've shown you today, the rest of what's been covered in this webinar. What's next? Must ask conditional formatting to show red, amber, green, and searchable, etc. is e.g. SQL is great. We'll definitely be using that ASAP. Would be really useful to get the demo dashboards as examples as well as that, if that's possible. Oh, I can see if we could do that for sure. It's not secret or anything. So I'll see if we can do that afterwards. That's a very good point. I'll see what we could do there. What else is there? Can Dashboard Server also be used with the upcoming SCOM managed instance? Very good question. Yes, it can. There are instructions on our KB as to how to do it. There are some additional steps over on-prem SCOM because obviously it's hosted in the cloud, but yes, it can be. There's also a dedicated SCOM managed instance plugin for our cloud edition that is designed specifically for SCOM MI. So yes is the short answer, and that was the long answer. What else is there coming in? No questions for now, but great new features. Thanks very much to the team, especially for the hosting stack tile. That's great feedback. And thank yous coming in. If there are any other questions, I'll leave the chat open for a bit longer so they can come in. And just to say in general, if you do have feedback on Dashboard Server, if there are things that you want to see, please do let us know via support or directly to me. It's going to be me that ends up looking at them. I'm very keen on hearing your feedback so we can make Dashboard Server as good a product as we can. Also true for EAM-X. If there are plugins you particularly want to see to plug into SCOM, I'd love to hear them along with the use cases. Please do find me directly. I'm on LinkedIn or bruce.cullen@squaredup.com. One more question. Any updates on roadmap 5.9 and 6.0 to 2023? So not in this webinar. We are working hard on the roadmap right now. We're working on potentially a new visualization. There's some big changes planned for a couple of releases time. I don't want to go into details of because I don't want to promise anything in the area of auditing, which would be very, very cool. Not going to make any commitments at this stage, and that's the reason why, because there's a lot of work involved in scoping out such a big feature, why there's no roadmap slide today. What else is there? Maybe an easy possibility to see in real time what users are connected to SquaredUp. Have a look in VADA to see that info. How? I'm not sure I get that question. Is it you want to see what users are connected to Dashboard Server real time? Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. And there's certainly something we can look into in the future. There is within the system area, you can see which users are licensed, if that helps. But that is not the same as the answer to your question. We'll bear that in consideration for future versions. There are sessions dedicated to products such as Exchange and SharePoint, is the question. So within Dashboard Server, if you're with SCOM monitoring Exchange and SharePoint, then you can obviously pull them in that way. As far as cloud is concerned, we don't currently have an Exchange or a SharePoint plugin, and the main reason for that is I want to hear what information you want to see from Exchange or SharePoint. So if you are interested in seeing that, please do give me a call afterwards, send me an email and we'll book a call, because it's the details I need for my team to be able to build something meaningful there. There we go. Next one, IS will show the connections. I'm not sure I understand the question there. That seems to be the end of the questions. So unless there are any further questions, I'll give it another minute or so. I will sit here in silence and see. But if not, thank you very much for coming today. I hope this has been informative for you. I've had good fun putting it together, and it's always good to play with all the new things that our engineering team are building. All right. Unless there's anything else, thank you very much, everyone. Until next time, thank you. Goodbye.